I'm Judy Woodruff along with my colleague Bernard Shaw in Washington. Welcome to WorldView. Coming up, reports from Cologne, Germany, from the White House. But we begin in Belgrade, where the Serbian parliament has voted to accept an international peace plan for Kosovo. But still, no word from Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic himself. We have comprehensive coverage, starting, as we say, with CNN's Walt Rogers in Belgrade.
Despite initial skepticism from NATO countries, those who met with Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic were convinced he has now accepted terms for ending the war laid down by the major powers. Goran Matic, a senior Yugoslav government minister, announced, quote, "There is a deal." Still to be heard from is President Milosevic himself, but Europe's peace envoy, Finnish President Matti Ahtisaari, also present, said all relevant parties accepted the offer.
I would also hope that this decision would lead to contacts between the military so that we can come and start implementation of the plan.
Highlights of the peace plan include withdrawal of all Serb troops from Kosovo, repatriation of more than 800,000 Kosovar refugees, and an international security force with NATO troops at the core to protect the refugees. Belgrade's acceptance of the peace plan was clearly signaled by this emergency meeting of the Serb parliament. The parliament's overwhelming approval meant President Milosevic wanted the deal, even if it was a take-it-or-leave-it proposal. Not all Serbs liked the major powers' terms for ending the war.
It means that Serbia's government capitulated since it accepted foreign troops in the territory of Serbia.
We will never accept aggressor troops in any part of Serbia.
On Belgrade streets, reaction was reserved and guarded, cautious about what will happen next.
I don't know how Americans will react. I think Americans just prefer bombing us.
A senior government official called the day's events the first step toward peace in Yugoslavia. Still, the Balkans have been racked by war for nearly a decade now, and securing a genuine peace may be at least as challenging as waging war. So when the peace envoys from Europe and Russia departed this time, theirs may only have been a temporary goodbye. Walter Rogers, CNN, Belgrade.
We remind our viewers CNN's reporting from Yugoslavia is subject to certain restrictions set by Yugoslav authorities. CNN must seek permission to videotape news events, and unrestricted travel outside of Belgrade is not permitted. Bernie.
Joining us now from the Pentagon, the Defense Secretary of the United States, William Cohen. Mr. Secretary, why have the Yugoslavians agreed?
Well, I really can't answer why they've agreed. What I can say is that our air campaign has been intensified for some time now, and it gets stronger each day and does more damage to Mr. Milosevic's forces each day. Why he has accepted this, and we hope that not only accepts it but implements it before any real positive action can take place on our part, remains to be seen, and he will have to declare for himself his rationale and reasons for it. But I can say that the air campaign has been intensified. As a result of that, we're seeing damage done on a fairly substantial basis each day.
Mr. Secretary, are you and others in the administration suggesting that there will be no let-up whatsoever in the NATO air campaign, the bombing campaign, in light of what the Yugoslav parliament has voted?
We have indicated from the very beginning there must not only be an acceptance in word of this agreement, there must be an acceptance in deed. There must be a manifestation of the intent to comply with this agreement by pulling forces out. So until such time as we see that manifestation, we intend to continue the air campaign. We're not going to rely upon either acts or statements of parliament or paper promises. We have to see the deeds being carried out.
Among the deeds to be carried out, the withdrawal of Serb forces. How can you assure yourself and the NATO allies that every Serb soldier will have withdrawn?
Well, we have a substantial capability of seeing what is taking place on the ground. To the extent that the Serbs start to move their forces out in substantial numbers and indicate an intent to carry forward the entire agreement, we can make a judgment at that point as to whether we will continue or not continue the campaign. Obviously, we would not seek to impede their withdrawal pursuant to an agreement on their part to fully withdraw from Kosovo, but we will make that judgment at an appropriate time. Until we see the actual performance performance as opposed to simply the words, then we intend to continue the campaign.
Mr. Secretary, do you see that do you acknowledge that there still will be a Serb role in the new Kosovo, the Kosovo post this NATO bombing campaign?
Well, as the agreement provides, there can be some minor participation on the part of the Serbs as far as guarding some sacred sites, be a very small number of Serbs that would be allowed into Kosovo. The key element, of course, is to have that peacekeeping force that is robust enough to make sure that security and safety of the refugees can be guaranteed, and that there will be a command and control structure under NATO's umbrella as such, and those are the key elements. And so we think that there can be some minor participation on the part of the Serbs, but not in very large numbers.
Secretary Cohen, should President Slobodan Milosevic be put on trial for war crimes and atrocities?
That's completely up to the court to make that determination. There has been an indictment, and I would assume that the prosecutor would intend to carry through with the indictment, but that's up to the court, not for me.
Secretary William Cohen, thanks for joining us on WorldView.
My pleasure.
Quite welcome. Western reaction to the agreement has been hopeful but cautious. We have two live reports from senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer and chief international correspondent Christian Amanpour in Cologne, Germany, where Finnish President Ahtisaari flew to brief European leaders after his trip to Belgrade. Christian, first to you.
Well, Bernie, it started to rain and it's cold, but really it's not an exaggeration to say it can't rain on the European leaders' parade today, because quite frankly, NATO leaders have been holding their breath for now nearly 10 weeks of bombing campaign, and today, for the first time here, they have been able to breathe a collective sigh of relief. While they're very pleased with what the Finnish president, their envoy, Matti Ahtisaari, has been able to achieve in Belgrade, the watchword is caution, although they say it's a good day for diplomacy, and they are very, very pleased that their NATO coalition held together in an extraordinary fashion. Everybody is talking caution, and they're saying the proof will be in the implementation, and that the Yugoslav leader must now do that.
I think you're just sensibly cautious if you're dealing with Milosevic and you're dealing with a situation in which there have been so many terrible things done. And I've got no doubt at all we wouldn't be in this position were it not for the fact that NATO has demonstrated unity, demonstrated resolve.
Now, the European leaders also were very careful to thank and pay tribute to the Russian participation. Viktor Chernomyrdin, the special Russian envoy, made several trips to Belgrade, and they went out of their way today to praise his efforts. What's clear in the end, though, according to the European leaders, is that Russia eventually came on board with NATO's conditions, agreeing most significantly to a NATO peace force in Kosovo, and that they felt perhaps was the thing that made Milosevic realize that he really had nowhere else to turn. Now we go to CNN's senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer at the White House for reaction from the leader of the NATO alliance.
Christian, President Clinton and other top advisors are very, very happy about what's going on, although publicly they're avoiding any sense of gloating. They're avoiding any sense that this is a done deal because they've been down here before. They say they can't necessarily trust the words of either the Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic or his parliament. At the same time, Mr. Clinton is warning that the airstrikes, at least for the time being, will continue.
First, we must have clarity that the Serbian leadership has fully accepted these conditions and intends to fully implement them. Until then, and until Serb forces begin a verifiable withdrawal from Kosovo, we will continue to pursue diplomacy, but we will also continue the military effort that has brought us to this point.
U.S. officials say the next 24 to 48 hours will be critical in determining whether this peace process is going to go forward. We just heard from the Defense Secretary William Cohen announce that there will be an effort made in the next day or two or three to go forward with the start of a military-to-military conversation between NATO and the Yugoslav military forces. The purpose would be to begin that Serb withdrawal of their 40 to 50,000 military, paramilitary, and police forces from Kosovo. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, reporting live from the White House.
Thank you, Wolf, and thank you, Christian. Well, some details of the Kosovo peace plan have yet to be worked out. CNN's David Ensor reports on some potential sticking points.
The peace plan approved by the parliament in Belgrade appears to fully meet NATO's demands. But as U.S. officials were cautioning, the devil is in the details, and there could still be trouble with them. For example, the plan says the UN Security Council, where Russia has a veto, will decide on Kosovo's interim government. The Serbs believe that will give them some key leverage.
This would ensure Milosevic a long-term role because it gives Milosevic a main voice in the future of Kosovo through the Security Council.
The plan also leaves many details yet to be worked out. When will Serb forces start to withdraw? What is a verifiable withdrawal that would prompt NATO to stop bombing? When will NATO and other peacekeeping forces start moving into Kosovo? And will Russia be part of the peacekeeping force?
We, the United States, and I think this is a view shared by all of our allies, think that it would be a very good thing if Russia is part of that.
U.S. officials point to the way Russian and American troops have worked together in Bosnia, keeping the peace, as a model for Kosovo. But there is no agreement yet. Then there is the key issue of who is in military command of the peacekeepers. The U.S. says it must be NATO. The plan says the forces will be under overall UN jurisdiction. How the details are worked out could be critical.
Before the United States puts a single soldier in, or anybody else from NATO, you have to be sure about who's in charge. And there's a test. The test is, will refugees feel comfortable enough to go home?
But while the deal is not yet done, U.S. officials are pointing out that their strategy of sticking with the air campaign for more than 10 weeks does appear to have convinced the Serbs to give in to NATO demands. They aren't celebrating here yet, but they are relieved. David Ensor, CNN, the Pentagon.
News of the peace proposal spread quickly among Kosovo's refugees. Many reacted cautiously. CNN's Ben Wiedemann reports from the Stankovic refugee camp in Macedonia.
It was news the Kosovar refugees were waiting to hear. But when the news was broadcast over loudspeakers at Stankovic refugee camp, it was met with a strong dose of skepticism.
Yeah, we're happy, but we can't believe it because we always get those news that it's going to be good, but they change their minds.
I heard the news today, and I mean that Milosevic many times give promises and never he don't. I mean he lying.
A timetable for the return of the refugees is still a long way off, even if the peace plan is signed, sealed, and delivered. Given the logistical challenge of moving more than 250,000 refugees out of Macedonia, it will be weeks and more likely months before they can begin to leave. And before that can happen, a NATO-led peacekeeping force, much of it currently based in Macedonia, would have to move in. That force now stands at more than 15,000 and will be increased to 30,000 in the coming weeks.
Trained multinational forces here who have been doing nothing but training, maintaining our military skills, and we're ready to implement a peace agreement if directed to do so.
For the time being, the refugees will have to stay put, enduring conditions difficult enough as they are, and bound to deteriorate as summer sets in. As much as these refugees would like to return home today, it will take far more than news from Belgrade to convince them it is safe to return. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Stankovic refugee camp, Macedonia.
On WorldView, 10 years after Tiananmen Square, we'll take a look at China today, what has changed and what hasn't.
We're not relying on the government.
We're not relying on the company.
We're not relying on a big fat inheritance.
We trade online.
We're betting on ourselves.
$7.95 stock trades, low margin interest rates, comprehensive research, shorttrade.com, a smart tool for smart investors.
While some folks couldn't sleep,
You were peacefully sleeping thanks to new Simply Sleep from the makers of Tylenol PM. It's non-habit forming and eases you into a restful night's sleep. New Simply Sleep.
A rugged Montana from Pontiac. With not one, but two sliding doors. Something handy for whoever's passing through. Life is more exciting in Montana.
Did you remember the milk?
Something wonderful is happening at Ditech. A complete metamorphosis has occurred. Introducing Ditech.com. Now you can get fast online approval for a low-cost home loan direct from the lender 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Ditech.com. You have to see it to believe it. Today's low 30-year fixed rate is just 6 3/4%. Get fast online approval or call 1-800-71-FIXED.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Bell Atlantic, your guide through the wiles of communications.
Tonight on Larry King Live, Madeleine Albright on the possibility of peace in Kosovo. And Governor Jesse Ventura, tonight 9 Eastern on CNN.
Cable, the fastest way to unleash the power of the Internet. Internet, the ultimate source for news, communication, and entertainment. Revolution makes the impossible possible. Join the cable internet revolution today. Call now for Intermedia at Home.
Sign up now and receive free installation.
Hi, welcome to Bassett. Join us for the Red, White, and Blue sale. Save on looks from traditional to contemporary and every style in between. And give your home the flair that's uniquely yours. 10 great sofas and over 75 fabrics to choose from, starting as low as $6.99, and pay no interest for 15 months. Hurry in now. The Red, White, and Blue sale ends June 7th.
The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs, weeknight 6:30 Eastern on CNN.
On this 10-year anniversary of the crackdown in Tiananmen Square, China is facing new unrest. The story from CNN's Beijing bureau chief, Rebecca McKinnon.
Laid-off workers demonstrate for pay. Neighborhood residents protest corruption. A woman demands justice for a relative killed by medical malpractice. She says the courts didn't do anything. While police do their best to keep the outside world from seeing these protests, officials privately acknowledge ordinary people are taking their complaints to the streets, demanding their legal rights.
There's this kind of two-handed approach. On the one hand, use the legal system, but be prepared to make trouble, to use civil disobedience and collective action to promote your interests. I think that's a big change.
But as with these farmers in southern China fighting police over how their land can be used, the demands are personal or very local. That's in part because the government has locked up or exiled most dissidents who've tried to turn personal grievances into larger political action. There are also many Chinese who've profited from the last 10 years of China's economic growth and who don't want to rock the boat.
The public's attitude has changed since the 1980s. People are only interested in earning money.
For me personally, human rights means the way I live my life, says this woman. I have to be careful not to lose my job. If somebody else has a problem, I can't help. 10 years after the crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrators, it's personal interest, not political interest, that motivates most Chinese today. That's why the growth of social unrest around the country is not likely to bring the government down anytime soon. Rebecca McKinnon, CNN, Beijing.
And for WorldView, I'm Bernard Shaw.
And I'm Judy Woodruff. The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs next.
This is the... helping children beyond blaming on Larry King Live tonight.
Peace in Yugoslavia. NATO officials say airstrikes could end within days. But is everyone on board? A look at Kosovo's rebels, their willingness to lay down their weapons of war and their aims of independence. And 10 years after the massacre in Tiananmen Square, a new movement in China. An exclusive